Sad to say, we're just waiting for someone, anyone, to put Arsene Wenger out of his misery. But should he take all the blame for Arsenal's failure? True, he signed or nurtured these players, but they're using him as a human shield. How can the new manager, whoever he might be, trust them? Tom?
Poor Arsene. I mean, what a week to be in his shoes, from the start of it, losing the Carabao Cup final in just, abject display, absolutely dismal. I was at the game then that followed the Manchester City Premier League defeat, and they were simply picked apart by a much better side, but a side who aren't just much better than Arsenal, much better than everyone. So we have to take that into account. And I think Wenger was right. I think there is an unbelievable amount of fragility in the side. The confidence is at perhaps the lowest ebb it's been in the entire almost 22 years he's been there. And the players need their fair share of the blame for that. These are professional athletes. They go into work every day. It's up to them as a group to lift each other, to marshal each other, to give each other that boot up the backside they need at the right time. But I don't think, I wouldn't ever put the blame solely on Arsene Wenger. I wouldn't ever put the blame solely on the players, because the board need to come into this as well, because it's a drip effect all the way down to that dressing room. The board are the ones who agreed that Wenger should stay on for 2 more years when it was clear to absolutely everyone, and I've been one of his staunchest defenders. I felt after the first leg 5-1 defeat in the Champions League by Bayern Munich last year that it had gone beyond now anything that Wenger could do with the club. He couldn't take them any further after taking them an incredible distance. They gave him the new contract. He was so stubborn that he stayed at the club, so that was his fault as well. That was their fault, and the players just haven't reacted. So as a collective, Arsenal Football Club deserve all the blame that's coming their way at the moment.
Let's look at players if we could, Daniel. We saw Chelsea basically reinventing walking football in the Premier League, at Manchester City. Frankly, some of those Arsenal players, and I take what you said, Tom, about the collective responsibilities and blame, but they were just going through the motions. Is this a modern trait of the player?
What I do think is that if I think we possibly underestimate how much a difference a very small difference in effort can make. Arsenal are a better team than Brighton. They have better players. But even if Arsenal are at 95, 92% and Brighton are at their best, that accounts for that shortfall. And they clearly wanted it more. And in the biggest moments of the match, they wanted it more and they made it pay. I think it's a question of motivation. And I agree you have to call into question players who cannot self-motivate, who require a stable stage on which to perform anywhere above, incompetent at the moment. But I don't think we can underestimate just how much that uneven stage, that instability, how much of a difference that makes every day. If you're going into work every day and you know that not everyone is pulling in the same direction, and that's not just in the team, that's everyone above you as well, I think that makes a huge difference. I think that is the case outside of football, and I think it's certainly the case inside football. Yes, Tom's absolutely right. Of course, they should take blame, and there'll be some of them that get a huge shock when Arsene Wenger's replacement comes in, because they've been on easy street for a long time, complacent, taking their wage for granted, perhaps. But yeah, I think it's a little bit too easy to purely blame them simply because the club has created that completely unstable structure that's that produces results like this.
There's a lack of leadership, isn't there?
Yeah.
And are we seeing? I had a text exchange last night with a former pro who basically said the real leader, the one who gets at people in the dressing room, pins them up against the wall if they're not doing it. They're almost treated as a bit of a troublemaker in a club environment, and they're the ones who go. It's the people who are compliant and the politically correct, if you like. Is old school leadership now dead in football?
No, I think there's still a place for it. I mean, it's not too long ago that we'd got the likes of John Terry and Frank Lampard and Michael Ballack. They had a team full of leaders, and I think if you look at the squad, that Chelsea squad, which did so well over the years, they had the ability to go toe to toe with every team on a technical level. But as the old Arsenal team did, the Tony Adams, the Keowns, the Bolds, they would also scrap you in the tunnel or scrap you out on the field if they needed to. Manchester United, when they were at their best, winning the treble, they had the likes of Roy Keane, who, yes, technically unbelievable, but had even more heart about him. I think to pick up on Daniel's point, in English football, we love technically gifted players, but the crowd really get up when they see people put in that extra little bit of effort in a sprint. And look, there's no need to waste sprints and play up to the crowd, but just showing them that there is that little bit more, there's that bit of steel and grit and tenacity, determination to want to win the game. That lifts them. That in turn lifts your teammates as well. And I think the only person in the current Arsenal side who has got that about him is Jack Wilshere, and I think he's been let down by a lot of players who haven't got that in their attitude, they haven't got that in their makeup. But I think that is Arsene Wenger's issue. I think in terms of once players cross the line, I used to write Jimmy Greaves' column for 3 or 4 years for the Sunday People, and Jimmy would always go mad about managers shouting on the touchline, because he'd say they should be doing their job Monday to Friday at the training ground, and then the second the players cross the white line, they have to take the responsibility. And that's what I say about the whole responsibility with Arsenal Football Club. I don't think Arsene Wenger's doing his job properly during the week, and nor are the players at the weekend, or when the time is right for them to cross that line.
Tom mentioned Steve Bold. Now, what does he do there apart from sit on his seat and gurn at people during a game? You've got that defence which is falling to bits. Let's be honest. Peter Cech at least came out and put his hands up and said, "Look, that was my mistake." You've got Mustafi's not good enough. Koscielny has fallen off a cliff. What's happening with that defence?
I think it's two things. Firstly, I think the coaching systems in place are clearly not fit for purpose. That Arsenal are conceding a lot of different types of goals. They're conceding from open play, they're conceding because they're not keeping the right defensive line, the set-piece goals they've conceded this season. We remember the FA Cup game against Nottingham Forest. Those, laughable concession of goals from set pieces. So I don't think that's fit for purpose, and Steve Bold has to take responsibility for that, because he's in there and he knows Arsenal and he knows how to defend, so he should be good enough to do that. The other thing is, I don't think there's enough competition for places. We talk about Koscielny and Mustafi, but behind, Chambers played yesterday and he was out of favour for years, as well as, was loaned out to Middlesbrough, wasn't considered fit for purpose. Obviously, Gabriel left because he wasn't considered good enough. Per Mertesacker is kind of the backup at the moment, and yet he's retiring at the end of the season. Rob Holding hasn't kicked on. There just isn't that competition for places at all at Arsenal, in any position, but most obviously in centre-back, especially when they're playing three of them. Because, there's basically just Per Mertesacker waiting as the next cab off the rank, and he's retiring in 3 months.
A mate of mine always says that the Arsenal players are the sort of boys that, as a parent, you'd want your daughter to bring home. And he's absolutely right, and that isn't going to win you Premier League football matches.
What will they need? They're going to San Siro on Thursday. You've got Gattuso.
Miracle.
Yeah, they will. And I love Gattuso, I have to say. All this thing, you don't know about management until it smashes you in the teeth, which is exactly what's happening with Arsene Wenger at the moment. Are Arsenal going to capitulate again in that circumstance?
That's also what Gattuso tried to do to Joe Jordan, if you remember. As well. It was one of the most memorable occasions of covering football. But look, Arsenal, it's a really tough place to be going for them at the moment. It would be a tough place at any stage. And let's not forget, AC Milan haven't had the greatest of seasons. They've been a bit of a roller coaster, but I think they're unbeaten in 12 now, and it just shows that the confidence levels they've got and that fighting spirit that Gattuso will undoubtedly have injected into that side, and that to me is what Arsenal need. Whoever comes in as the next manager, it needs to be someone with that nastiness behind him as well. Someone who has been in and around teams that have played lovely football and can inject it into Arsenal. I just see them go into the San Siro, and it's in usual circumstances, you would be, as an Arsenal fan, you would be looking forward to this game, this incredible stadium, it's a wonderful place to go and watch European football, but you'd be going there fearing the worst, because the confidence, as I say, is just at absolute rock bottom.